Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. Now, where did we stop? Khilji. Okay. One more thing about Khilji that I had to tell and I forgot to tell the last time, and that is about Khilji's military reforms. Okay. One basic thing about Khilji's military reforms. Uh, yes. So, if you remember, we were discussing in Khilji and Tughlaq. There's one more thing about Alauddin Khilji's, one more point that you must remember, and that's about their. देखिए, about Khilji, I told you the city that Khilji formed was Siri, and Siri is horse khas. Remember it like this. जहाँ पार्टी करने जाते हैं, that is अलाउद्दीन खिलजी ने बनवाया था वहाँ आपकी पार्टी के लिए, ठीक है? You remember it like that. The other thing is about Tughlaq. Tughlaq established what was called as Tughlaqabad. Okay, so that is there. But one more thing about Khilji that you must remember from your examination point of view is in terms of the military reforms. And in terms of the military reforms, something that Khilji introduced was दाग एंड चेहरा. देखिए बड़ी सिंपल सी बात है. कॉन्सेप्ट क्या है? कॉन्सेप्ट यह है कि आर्मीज आर ऑनेस्ट. कॉन्सेप्ट यह है कि हर जगह करप्शन है, बट कहाँ नहीं है करप्शन? आर्मी में. और हर जगह करप्शन है, बट आर्मी में कोई करप्शन नहीं. Khilji also believed in this. To ensure that there is no corruption in the army, he introduced these military reforms of Daag and Chehra. Simple thing is, back then there was no selfie. So what was there was that, every soldier's face cut, etc. was described on a piece of paper. That is what is called as the Chehra. That's what they described verbally on a piece of paper. That was Chehra. And every soldier's facial appearance, etc., bodily appearance was described in the Chehra. This is to identify the soldier. Okay. The second thing is Daag. Daag was an inscription often marked on the royal horses, meant for fighting war. So that poor quality horses do not. So that what happens is that horses, as I've always said, is a very, very expensive, aspect of war fighting. A good horse was often something which could make a lot of difference in the battlefield, and also came very expensive. So there was always the possibility of corruption that they bought an expensive horse, and then later the military commanders may replace the expensive horse with a cheap horse. Okay, and say that we bought this horse. So that is, it's like आपने कार खरीदी और अंदर की मशीन बदल दी. So to ensure that this kind of smuggling or this kind of fake duplication, etc., does not happen, the horse was inscribed with a royal seal, Daag. And that is Daag and Chehra, both were primarily meant to ensure what? That the efficiency of the army is maintained and there is no corruption within the army. That you recruited, if a soldier was recruited, he is being paid a salary, etc., he can be identified. आपने बोला कि you were supposed to maintain say 1,000 soldiers. So all these 1,000 fellows will have their chehra clear in it. Okay, but what if what? that what if that chehra doesn't match? The king said that, okay, call the 1,000 soldiers. And if they start matching the verbal description with the real description, and if they don't match, means they did not maintain the troops. They made a false, chehra or something of that sort. And when called to present the troops, there would be a clear mismatch. And this is what their checks and balances. You see, corruption within the army was a problem, and to tackle that, they had introduced. These were more Afghani reforms. Dag and chehra were a usual practice in Afghan affairs, in the way they maintained their army. So you must know from your prelims point of view, सीधा सीधा आ जाएगा, what does dag and chehra refer to? So dag was a royal seal inscription on the horses maintained for purpose of war. And chehra was a role and a verbal description of the soldier which was prepared. And both these military reforms were aimed at tackling corruption within army. So, can you think of this? That's the implication of studying history. If there was corruption within army then there is corruption within army even today. Whether that's Indian army, any army in the world. Why? Because power corrupts. And one of the things is that the point is that governance and corruption, why do you need governance? Because if you assume that men are saints, then there will not be corruption anywhere. We believe that there is a need for governance and oversight because we begin with the assumption that there can be corruption. Okay. And that is why you need oversight. And without oversight, obviously there will be no corruption. कई लोग बोलते हैं आज कोई corruption नहीं है. बिल्कुल नहीं है. जब oversight ही नहीं होगा, तो corruption कहाँ आएगा? When there is no data available only, when there is no oversight available only, when there is no RTI working only, so there will be no corruption. Because you will never get to know what is happening. There will be only one thing, and that is Vikas. Okay. Unlimited, unstoppable Vikas. So that is there. Now, the next thing to talk about, so that's there, last thing that I had to tell there. Now अब आ जाइए Mughals पे. देखिए let me just first explain what are we going to do. Actually, if you look at Khilji and then at Tughlaq, ये क्या हुआ 1350. Tughlaq, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, and once the Tughlaqi dynasty ends, it is ending somewhere in 1414. And then comes the role of the Lodhis. Ibrahim Lodi, Jalaluddin Lodi. Both the Lodhis basically were the ones who came to play some role. But we are not really interested in the Lodi dynasty. We are more interested in the Mughals in the north, and eventually so what we'll be doing covering today is we'll talk about the Mughals, we'll talk about the Vijayanagara Empire in the south, we'll talk about the Portuguese. Because 1500s is the time when who is coming to India? The Portuguese. The Mughals also and the Portuguese also. And we'll have again a description on the Rajputs in the Mughal era. Because they are the ones who again will, just like they pose a resistance to the Afghans, they will pose a resistance to the Mughals as well. Okay. So that is it. Now we are not getting to too much about the origins of Mughals. Just to tell you this much, they originated from the Uzbek region. On the one side, they were descendants of Genghis Khan, the Mongols. On the other side, they were descendants of Timur, thus called the Timurids. Timur also invaded the northern parts, including the Punjab region, in the 1400s. They're descendants of Timur as well as Genghis Khan. And to that extent, you see, Babur was one who came from the Fargana Valley. You know where is the Fargana Valley? If you don't know, it's a sin, my dear friends. Not because of history, but because of GS. And also because of, आपने एक organization का नाम सुना SCO? Right? SCO का एक aim होता है, आप बार बार पढ़ते हैं, terrorism. To tackle terrorism, RATS. The regional anti-terrorism structure is a organization of the, एक सेकेंड पहले, हाँ मैं आपके चेहरे देख के एक चीज समझ के मुझे याद आ गया जो मुझे बताना. This thing about current affairs, right? A lot of you are very वो कि सर current affairs का क्या होगा, कैसे करना है. देखिए, what should be your approach? I will tell you how I look at it. If you have not been reading if you have not been reading newspaper, and you think by reading any booklet you will be prepared, so you are mistaken. अगर आप पाप कर चुके हैं, so by sitting in whoever's class, whatever's class, doing whatever or reading from whichever 10 sources, there is no replacement for a newspaper. First thing. Having said that, does not mean that you have to, imbibe newspaper into yourself cover to cover. That's not the objective. What is there is, now what you should be doing is, whatever you have read from newspaper before, you should revise. The other thing is, I think there is no India yearbook this time. Nor is there a survey. But there is still the last year's yearbook. Can you just call somebody from there? But there is the last year yearbook. Now what do you do is, you take the last year yearbook and do what? There is ministry wise thing in the yearbook. What you should do is, ministry wise there is chapters in the yearbook. So okay, energy chapter. Energy chapter. हल्का गरम पानी दो. Okay, one more announcement. 10th February, that other crash course is beginning in the evening. All of those whom of you who want to attend it are Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas, free to attend it. There is only one condition. The condition is you give one photograph and one ID proof here. They will make a separate I card for it. They are of the opinion that please get that I card made. That is very essential if you want to come for that class. They are saying that because it helps them keep a track of other things as to material and all those things. So please, you don't have to pay anything. कुछ नहीं करना है, बस एक photograph और एक I card, एक I card का copy दे दीजिए. They'll make another separate I card for that crash course. Okay, in the evening. Now, okay. So what you do is, every ministry wise, say energy sector, whatever are the major flagship schemes of the government, you should be able to tell. Similarly, about all the flagship schemes of all the ministries that you should be able to do. Then what do? Then you pick up IR वाला section. आपने जो भी पढ़ा है, जितनी major organizations है, उसका ना आपको, what you should be remembering is not just composition but the map. Suppose SCO is there. Who all are the members of SCO? Locate it on the map. See from east to west, what are the capitals? From north to south, whatever, east to west, whatever are the capitals. IR mein whatever has been in discussion, see the map of that area from India's perspective. Especially I'm saying East Africa, South China Sea, East China Sea, Central Asia, West Asia, and even partly Eastern Europe. You should be able to see whichever has been an area of geopolitical conflict or tension in the past year and a half. Environment, whatever schemes are there, whatever has been happening currently in terms of any summit which has happened. There was another summit which was concluded, I think the Poland summit, right? So the COP summits, whatever has happened, that you should be able to. So what should you be doing? बच्चे क्या करते हैं, month wise चल रहा है मामला, which is one approach. My sense says the approach should be ministry and topic wise. Is that enough? Nothing in the world is enough. Is that necessary? Yes. Okay. So use this approach. It will be very useful. And Rishi sir will be, in the current affairs thing also, Rishi sir will be taking some 2 days of current affairs, 2 or 3 days of current affairs on science and tech and environment, and I'll take 3 days on polity and economy related, whatever things I feel is relevant from the exam. Is that enough? My answer is no. Is that necessary? Yes. अगर आपको वो तो आना ही चाहिए, उसके ऊपर करंट अफेयर्स में कोई लिमिट नहीं. Okay, but that is very necessary. Okay, that should be your approach to current affairs. और उसके ऊपर there is no limit. आप जितना पढ़ सकते हैं, जितना कर सकते हैं करिए, कोई बुराई नहीं है, लेकिन उतना जरूर you must be able to do. Now let's talk about the Mughals. Okay. Now, when we talk about the Mughals, what we need to keep in mind is that Babur is the one who is considered was the founder of the Mughal dynasty, right? He is coming from the Fargana Valley. ये सारी बात वहाँ से चालू हो गई एकदम से. Fargana Valley is the valley region in Central Asia, which is today considered a hotbed of terrorism in Central Asia region. तो आपको ये पता होना चाहिए फरगाना वैली कहाँ है, because where the SCO is formed, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization says that one of its primary objective is to tackle terror related threats that originate from the फरगाना वैली. जाइए इसे मैप पे देख लीजिएगा. ओके. I'm not saying that Babur is a terrorist. I'm just saying that he also came from the Fargana Valley region. है ना, पता चला आप बोल रहे हैं कि सर आप तो ये कह रहे हैं, नहीं ऐसा नहीं. Okay, so that is there. Now let's start with when Babur came to North India, who is there? Lodi dynasty is ruling in the north. Okay, the Lodi dynasty is ruling in the north, and the conditions in North India are such that you see that the Lodi dynasty maintained its presence in north and were often Afghan and economically it was witnessing what? Northern Plains was witnessing Northern Plains economically, the Northern Plains was what? Productive region. Now, who? Babur came. Babur came from Central Asia, and partly he had managed to control the Afghan regions also. Now, Afghan regions and territories were not as productive. Why did Babur come to, Northern Plains? Because the Northern Plains were fertile and productive. And the Afghan regions and territories were not that fertile or productive. Okay. And to that extent, Babur said that once we capture Northern Plains, we will have to no longer see the misery or the shortages that were often prevalent in Afghan areas, which Babur had managed to capture. But in spite of capturing Afghan regions, the Afghan regions were not as productive as was the Northern Plains. But the capture of Afghan territories made it easier for them to come into the Northern Plains. So the first battle of Panipat was fought in 1526, where Babur defeated Ibrahim Lodi. Now, this is considered as a very defining battle, primarily because Babur had a smaller army than Ibrahim Lodi. Babur had a smaller army than Ibrahim Lodi, yet Babur managed to defeat Ibrahim Lodi. And this is considered an important event. Why? Because Babur, with his numerically smaller army, managed to defeat Babur with his numerically smaller army managed to defeat Lodi. And this was made possible. This was possible due to two things. Because of Babur's strategy and because of what is called as the use of gunpowder. Now, gunpowder was known to Indians even before Babur. Gunpowder was known to Indians before Babur also. However, what Babur did was he revolutionized its use and made a major use of it. Now, gunpowder, basically, what is Babur making use of? Cannons. And strategy, that was the Rumi or the Ottoman device. You've heard about this? Let me just, if you've read, very good. If you've not, I'm just explaining. Babur, he's coming from Central Asia and Afghan regions. The Lodis expected them to use a fast-moving strategy, use fast horses to attack the Lodi forces. However, rather than using a fast-moving strategy, Babur used a more defensive strategy in Panipat. And he made use of this Rumi or the Ottoman device. The idea was that in the plains of Panipat, what did they do? In the plains of Panipat, if there were the Lodis, बहुत सारे Lodis, right? So what did they do was that they utilized a more defensive strategy where they dug in a ditch. And this is war happening in the plains region, so there is no hiding, etc. So they dug in the ditches, okay, and in these ditches, what did they do? They covered it with phool patti. They covered these ditches, and just behind these ditches, they brought in what? Bullock carts, and placed their cannons using gunpowder between the bullock carts. So if the attacking army, so they went defensive. They wanted the Lodhis to attack. So when the Lodhis attacked, some of them fell into the ditches. Those who survived would be shot by that was their strategy. This was called the Ottoman or the Rumi device. And this was a more defensive strategy that they used. And also they made use of the gunpowder. And yes, they had a good cavalry and artillery both. Okay. So that is what was very important, because thus Babur brought a new kind of strategy to warfare in the region. It is often asked in the prelims exam also. So you can just, ये पूरी कहानी समझने के लिए बताइए मैंने. Okay. So you must remember that they made use of a defensive strategy. They made use of a defensive strategy. They made use of a defensive strategy. And in terms of gunpowder, they made use of defensive strategy. Secondly, gunpowder was used in wars on a major scale. And now here is another point about whom? About their war fighting. Gunpowder was an extremely expensive technology. Gunpowder was extremely expensive in nature, something that smaller armies could no longer afford, or smaller states could not afford. Only the big states could afford it. And that became very essential for any army. The result was smaller states increasingly became rare after the arrival of gunpowder. It's as much as saying this, technology and war have this symbiotic relationship in the sense that every new war fighting era also happens with the advent of new technology, and newer technologies may also often be more expensive. अरे पहले क्या है, हसिया से ही लड़ लिए, axe से ही you are fighting. Then you are saying no, horse driven chariots. Then you are saying expensive horses. Then you are saying iron equipment. Then you are saying अरे gunpowder. Then you are saying अरे tank. World War I tank, World War II Air Force. उसके बाद न्यूक्लियर बम बना लिया अब आपने. अब आप सुपरसोनिक मिसाइल, हाइपरसोनिक मिसाइल, ये सोनिक मिसाइल, वो सोनिक मिसाइल. क्या मालदीव्स बना लेगा क्या? Will Maldives be able to make? Small states, will they be able to afford such big, expensive defense weapon systems? Not possible. So, as the nature of technologies has gotten more expensive and difficult to acquire, smaller states have become at the mercy of bigger states, or would need protection of bigger states who are militarily in a position to defend themselves. So with the arrival of Babur, we say the era of small states in India came to an end, because gunpowder changed wars forever. And as gunpowder changed wars, it was something that not every state could afford. Get this point? ये important है prelims के लिए, what I just told. Okay. The use of gunpowder on a major scale was expensive and made it difficult for smaller states to acquire and use for their defense purposes. Next. So the first battle of Panipat, who won? Babur. And he defeated Ibrahim Lodi. But that's the thing to understand. When the Lodi dynasty was there in India, they were not the only powers in North India. And Babur had one challenge in the form of the Lodi dynasty. The other challenge for Babur was what? Yes? Rajputs. The other challenge for Babur was from the Rajputs, and the most important was that of Mewar, Rana Sanga. Rana Sanga was perhaps the strongest other resistance in North India apart from Lodis. And actually, Lodis and Rana Sanga themselves were in a bit of a contest with each other. देखिए, यहाँ पे fun बात ये है कि मतलब I laugh about it because I find this extremely funny. Is that the Lodis were a strong power in North India. It was Rana Sanga who wrote letters to Babur telling that Babur must plunder North India, and because of the richness of the North Indian plains. And why did Rana Sanga wrote these letters? Rana Sanga wrote these letters because if Babur defeats Lodi and he plunders and leaves, that's what often invaders did. They would defeat, they would plunder, and they would leave. Then it would make it easier for whom to control North India? Rana Sanga. Kannauj, etc. he would be able to control. So Rana Sanga wanted to control North India. So he's saying, Babur, you should attack Lodis. So Babur also attacks Lodis. And Babur is attacking Lodis not because Rana Sanga told him to do so, but because the northern plains were well endowed, and Babur was looking to establish his base also probably in the region. So Babur attacked Lodis and defeated the Lodis. Then Rana Sanga is like, Arey, Babur is not going now. Then what? Conflict between Babur and Rana Sanga. And that is what is going to happen in the battle of Khanwa. देखिए ऐसा होता है. तो आप चाह रहे हैं कि देखिए यही तो है. देखिए फॉर एग्जाम्पल, anyways, India is not a challenge to China in any sense of the term. In neither militarily nor economically, India is a challenge to China. But for India, one thing that protects India from China is the Great Wall of India. Which is that? The Himalayas. Right. So, that is one thing. Militarily, economically, बहुत आगे हैं वो हमसे. 6 times the Indian economy तो उनका size है. Economy का. Militarily also they are much ahead. Okay. They are going ahead with more diesel submarines than we ever had. They have already one aircraft carrier, the second is almost coming, and the third will come by 2021. हमारा एक ही चल ले, बड़ी बात है. Okay. And they don't see us also as a major competitor. But even to the extent that India has a vital position, not in the hills, but in the ocean, the Indian Ocean region. The Chinese understand that India can cause much trouble in the Malacca Strait region, given the Andaman and Nicobar Islands strategic position. So what do they have? Pakistan. India anyways is fixated with Pakistan. And Pakistan, ऐसा नहीं है that Pakistan is obsessed with India. India is equally obsessed with Pakistan. मतलब जरूरत है दोनों को एक दूसरे की. Okay, so that fixation with Pakistan is something that works to China's advantage. As long as India-Pakistan issues remain unresolved, it becomes even more difficult for India to deal with China. Many people are of the opinion कि नहीं, पाकिस्तान 1 इंच भी ये नहीं देंगे और वो नहीं देंगे. The essential thing is India's real tension is not with Pakistan. India's real matter, India's real concerns today are with respect to Chinese rise, not with Pakistan. We have left Pakistan behind. As insignificant is Pakistan to India as a direct security threat. They are less than half the size of the Indian army today. Economically, they are in shambles. So, Pakistan continues to be an issue, but a major issue which has emerged over decades, over the past 2 decades, is China. So, a number of strategists argue that it is important for India to settle the Pakistan question in whichever way possible, so that we can focus on a major problem that may emerge from China. Okay, so those are more complex questions. Why am I telling you this puri kahani? Kyun batai? This battle of Khanwa, Rana Sanga is expecting that they will, keep fighting each other, one will subdue the other, etc. And then he will leave, but that doesn't happen. Babur doesn't leave, and now Rana Sanga faces a strong challenge from Babur. And this is in the battle of Khanwa. Babur fought a major battle against Rana Sanga in the battle of Khanwa, in which he managed to capture Rajput territories. And the significance of Babur's rule is what? That he laid the foundation He laid the foundation of the Mughal Empire in the region. He wrote his biography, he wrote his memoir, which was called the Tuzuk-e-Babari. And this was written in Turkish. So that's there. Next is whom? After Babur. Dekhe, one of the things also, one of the Timuride or Timrid tradition was this, that the king, would divide, there was no clear rule of succession. Rather, the idea was that the king will divide his empire into amongst his sons. If he had 4 sons, 3 sons, whatever, he would divide the empire amongst his sons. Okay? It's not that there would be one ruler to prevent infighting amongst brothers, etc. The kingdom would be divided into different provinces to be given to different sons. But Babur knew that this would be a disastrous idea for a nascent or just emerging Mughal empire. So he said, "Aisa nahi hoga. The ruler will be whom? Humayun. The eldest son will be made the ruler, but at the same point of time, he will take good care of other princes and make them governors of other regions. So, Humayun, the eldest son, became the Mughal ruler, and Humayun is actually going to face an important tussle with whom? With two people. One was in Gujarat, and the Malwa region, Bahadur Shah. Now, he is also of an Afghan origin. देखिए, the Lodhis were Afghans. The Tughlaqs, Khiljis, Lodhis, all of them are Afghans. And they are of a Turkish origin. Who? The Mughals. So, Bahadur Shah, based in Gujarat, was partly of this origin, and this is where Humayun used to face a major challenge in the Gujarat and the Malwa regions. And adjacent to it, you see another challenge came from Bengal and Bihar region in the form of Sher Shah. Why was he called Sher Shah? Because he killed a Sher, Salman Shah. Okay. Black Buck Shah, right? So you can make your own Shahs also. So he's called Sher Shah primarily because of this region. The Shahs, again, I'm telling you, are either of the Persian or the Afghan origin. ये सरनेम वहीं से आया है, समझ जाए आप, right? मतलब आप चाह के भी नहीं बदल सकते ना, right? So you can't say that Shahs are Hindus. चलिए छोड़िए. So this is where is the major tussle of whom? Humayun. Now Humayun is able to deal with Bahadur Shah. ये बहादुर शाह जो गुजरात में है, अभी इनकी टसल और किसी से भी चल रही है. किससे? Anybody? Yes, Portuguese. So Bahadur Shah allows the Portuguese to operate so that he can fight whom? Humayun. Bahadur Shah in Gujarat realizes that he has to tackle both Humayun and the Portuguese. So he makes friends with Portuguese and says, we'll tackle Humayun. Ultimately what happened? Humayun defeated Bahadur Shah. तो ना इधर से बचे ना उधर से बचे. And who killed Bahadur Shah? The Portuguese. The Portuguese called Bahadur Shah on a ship off the coast of Surat, and accidentally he drowned from the ship. So Bahadur Shah वहां उनको Portuguese ने उनका काम लगा दिया और इधर उन्हें Humayun defeated. So Humayun imposed a defeat on Bahadur Shah, and this is all happening in the 1530. And शेर शाह, अभी यहां क्या हुआ? This is where you see is that there is a major tussle with Sher Shah, and Sher Shah imposed a defeat on the Battle of Chausa. In the Battle of Chausa, it was Sher Shah. In the Battle of Chausa, it was Sher Shah who imposed it was Sher Shah who imposed a crushing defeat on Humayun. And Battle of Kannauj. So Sher Shah imposed a defeat on Humayun and Humayun retreated in 1539, deciding to revive his army and attack Sher Shah again. A renewed attempt was made in 1540 in the Battle of Kannauj. Kannauj, as I told you, was a major center of power in the region. And here Sher Shah again imposed a crushing defeat. Sher Shah again imposed a crushing defeat on Humayun. After which what happened is, देखिए हुमायूं ने अपने भाइयों से मदद मांगी पर भाइयों ने मदद नहीं की. His brothers did not come to his rescue primarily because some of his brothers wanted to acquire the throne for themselves, and Humayun was not convinced that he could fully also rely on them or not. Ultimately, Humayun had to retreat, and as Humayun retreated, you see, Humayun went where? Humayun went to Iran. Humayun tried to revive, but Humayun could not. Humayun ultimately went to Iran, and it was Sher Shah or Sher Shah Suri which got this empire where you get it in all pink red. That is what is there. You see that his empire extended almost from the Ganges in the east up till Multan in the west. Pakistan bordering major areas of Pakistan as you see today, including the Indus Valley region, they brought in the control from the west to the Ganga in the east, the productive northern plains. Ultimately, who managed to defeat? Sher Shah, and Humayun is gone. And Humayun is gone for the period till almost the 1550s, 1555. And in 1555, when what happens? When Sher Shah dies. When Sher Shah died in 1555, that is when Humayun comes back, makes a comeback. इससे आपको क्या पता चलता है? एक तो long age is important. If you have to, because Humayun became a king at the age of 23 and Sher Shah became a king at the age of 45, 50. So Humayun simply outlived Sher Shah. And Humayun waited for his time. अपना टाइम आएगा. आपका टाइम तो मोदी जी का आया है. Right. But it showed that Humayun was willing to persist, and he did persist. And in a year after whose death? Sher Shah's death, you see that Humayun managed to recapture Delhi, etc. But, what does it tell you? It tells you, was Sher Shah a strong ruler or a weak ruler? Strong ruler. Secondly, it also tells you something else. And one more thing is that in 1556, after the year after which he captured Delhi back, Humayun, 1556 he died. He slipped from first floor. वो गिर गए. कोई पोलो खेलते हुए मर रहा है. These people are dying just like that. Have you heard? Some prime minister of some country slipped one floor and died. हमारे आजकल लोग कैंसर से लड़के वापस आ जाते हैं. Right. So that is there. Right. So in that context, from whom? What's her name? Sonia Gandhi. Sonia Gandhi used to go to Sloan Kettering for some treatment. We don't know which treatment, but some treatment. Sloan Kettering is world's best anti-cancer or world's best cancer hospital. अभी बाकी आपको वो तो दिख ही रहे हैं, जो जोश आई है जिनका, है ना, एक तो वो है, और उसके अलावा जेटली जी हैं, वो भी बैठे हुए हैं. किडनी विडनी ट्रांसप्लांट सब हो चुका उनका, नंबर तोड़ के हुआ था बाय द वे, लाइन तोड़ के, है ना. इनकी लाइन अलग लगती है एज ऑलवेज, राइट. सो लेकिन फिर भी अभी उनको कुछ और हो गया, फिर से सार्कोमा वार्कोमा पता नहीं क्या हो गया, वहाँ चले गए. और वो दूसरी मैडम है, क्या नाम है, सुषमा जी, वो एकदम टॉप लीडरशिप, नोबडी इज टेकिंग केयर ऑफ देयर हेल्थ एक्सेप्ट मोदी जी. शेर शाह एक ऐसे ही है, कौन, मनमोहन सिंह. वेदर ही इज अलाइव और नॉट, बट ही इज नॉट डाइंग, राइट. सो दैट इज देयर. Extent of empire. Now, Sher Shah is a very important one, though brief rule of 15 years or so, but is considered a very important ruler. Also, from a prelims point of view, it's kind of very important. The extent of the empire, as I told you, was from the Multan in west to Bengal in east. Extending to vast parts of Rajputs and Rana Sangha. फिर से वही बात. Rana Sangha had been forced into a retreat first by Babur, and now you see that a major defeat on Sangha is actually Sangha continued to pose a resistance to the Afghans at this time. The Sur Empire and Sher Shah. Ultimately, Sher Shah subdued Rana Sangha. And the contribution of Sher Shah, firstly in trade. आपने वो नाम सुना है, GT Road? That is the Sher Shah Road also. It is that road connecting almost up till, through Jammu and Kashmir, etc. Up till Central Asia and for trade. What is Sher Shah very importantly known for is for promotion of trade. And for promotion of trade, what did Sher Shah do? Was he established a number of highways which were what? Guarded. So firstly he said that for boosting trade, it is important that there must be tradeways. And for tradeways, he established road networks linking major North Indian trading cities starting from Bengal in the east up till Afghanistan, up till the borders of Afghanistan, and through Jammu and Kashmir region, he established long road networks. Okay. And these were guarded. What was also important was ऐसा ना हो जैसे आप यहां से जाते कहां, वेस्टर्न यूपी. From here, if you go to where, आगरा और अलीगढ़, तो आप हाईवे ले लीजिए, एक्सप्रेसवे जौन सा भी वो वे है, तो उसमें गाड़ी पंचर हो गई, 4 लोग आए, आपको मारा, आपका सामान लूट के ले गए. एक्सप्रेसवे पे भी सब हो रहा है. शेर शाह के टाइम में नहीं होता था. No, that's true. It's vividly written in every book that you read. शेर शाह सिंपल रूल, जिसके गांव में से से रास्ते से जा रहा है और चोरी हुई, the elite from those गांव will be captured and thrashed. It is their responsibility. Firstly, his army would be stationed at every few hundred kilometers, and there will be a rest house also, and that will be maintained on the expenses of the state, where basically any trader could stay on the side of the highway in that rest house free of cost, maintained by the state, and his goods would be safe, his commodities would be safe, and this was to ensure. And also what if the trader died? Pata chala some trader is dying, what happens to his goods? His goods will not go to anybody. His goods will be returned to his point of origin or family. So he ensured a very safe and a stable trading route so as to facilitate trade between these northern plains and other regions. Secondly, he said, tax will be paid at only two places for trading. For trade, the trade will be taxed only at two places. ऐसा नहीं कहीं से भी निकला लोकल जमींदार इसे लाओ टैक्स दो, ऐसे रोड पे लग जाता है हर 20-30 किलोमीटर्स ahead in a highway this toll tax, बोलते हैं टोल टैक्स दो. आप पूछिए टैक्स क्यों दिया है हमने? Indians should, there is no other place in the world where people pay road पे चलने का भी टैक्स. अरे इनकम टैक्स यू पेइंग, डायरेक्ट टैक्स यू पेइंग, इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स यू पेइंग, अभी आप रोड पे चलने का भी टैक्स, राइट? So there was no such tax. Only one tax at Multan and the other tax at Bengal. Only at two places taxes would be collected. बाकी toll free road है. Arey, you read in economy or not that the cost of transport must be less. So their cost of transport is less. So ये सारे points important हैं prelims के लिए. What reform Sher Shah introduced? So a stable taxation regime where taxes were to be collected only at 2 points. Multan and in Bengal. Bus. Currency reforms. What did he introduce? The silver dam or coin. He introduced a standardized silver dam or coin. Who? Sher Shah. Okay. Coin was also known as dam. And every group of villages, or for every group of villages, were called as the parganas. जैसे हम पढ़ते हैं संतल parganas etc etc. Every group of villages was called as parganas. Now the Shikdar and Munsif were two officers. Shikdar was in charge of, anybody? Yes? Shikdar was in charge of troop. Shikdar was in charge of troop maintenance and law and order maintenance. Whereas the Munsif would be, or Amil, would be in charge of, Munsif or Amil would be in charge of revenue. So land revenue administration he brought in reforms to collect taxes on basis of productivity. Military reforms. He continued with Afghan reforms of Khilji. The Dag and Chehra. Dag and Chehra. And built what? Dag and Chehra built what? Yes, Purana Killa, today known as the Purana Killa, which is there here. ये नेशनल, हाँ, अरे वो जब बुक फेयर लगता है वो कौन सी जगह? प्रगति मैदान. क्लोज टू प्रगति मैदान only it is, right? So Purana Killa, that was the old city fort. That is the remaining architecture. That is the one that was built under Sher Shah. Also literature में क्या हुआ कि ये what? Padmavat Malik Muhammad जैसे. And then his descendant कौन? बंसाली. अरे religious policy. Religious policy jizya, the imposition of jizya was there, and also they largely relied upon Afghan administrators. With little dependence on locals. हुमायूं. Yes. पूछे. क्या क्या सवाल क्या है आपका? क्या ट्रू स्टेटमेंट है कि नहीं? ये सब एक तो एमसीक्यू बना बना के, क्या मसाला क्या दांत में रखेंगे गन पाउडर का? अरे मैंने आपको क्या बताया? द यूज ऑफ गन पाउडर वॉज नोन टू इंडियंस बिफोर. ये एनसीआर देखिए, अभी मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ एनसीआरटी लाइन वर्बैटिम. अभी इसके आगे आपको जो दिमाग लगाना है एमसीक्यू में लगा सकते हैं. द यूज ऑफ गन पाउडर वॉज नोन टू इंडियंस बिफोर पानीपत, द फर्स्ट बैटल ऑफ पानीपत. तो यूज ऑफ gunpowder by Babur revolutionized the use of gunpowder and led to its mass use. अब पहली बार हुआ था. आंसर, अगर आप इस सेंटेंस को अंग्रेजी पढ़ें तो आंसर का मतलब है नहीं. ओके. However, क्या इसका मतलब है कि बाबर कैन बी क्रेडिटेड विथ स्प्रेडिंग द यूज ऑफ गन पाउडर इन इंडिया? यस. अब आपके एमसीक्यू की और जो तमन्ना है मैं नहीं पूरी कर सकता, इसका आपको जो इंटरप्रिटेशन बनाना है आप बना ली. ओके, दैट इज इट. सिंपल है, आपको जो याद रखने वाली बात है, इसलिए मैंने सिंप्लीफाई करके बोला था कि इज बाबर पॉपुलराइजिंग द यूज ऑफ गन पाउडर इन इंडिया? यस, खत्म बात. अभी फर्स्ट नहीं आएगा क्योंकि इट्स अ एम्बिगुअस स्टेटमेंट विच इज जब वहां पे लिखा हुआ है. ओके, बट यस, इट इज बाबर अंडर whom the use of gunpowder increased drastically in India. और बताइए, आप उस चीज का समाधान मांग रहे हैं मुझसे जिस चीज का समाधान किताब में नहीं है. उस चीज का मेरे पास कोई समाधान नहीं है. एनीथिंग एल्स? हुमायूं का कमबैक हुआ 1 साल के लिए, फिर हुमायूं का हो गया इंतकाल. आफ्टर अ brief revival of Humayun's rule following the death of शेर शाह. Following the death of Sher Shah, Humayun died in 1556 and came whom? Hrithik Roshan? Akbar. Right, Akbar. Now Akbar बड़ा important figure है, and that is because of the second battle of Panipat as well as the battle of हल्दी घाटी. महाराणा प्रताप हल्दी घाटी में और सेकेंड बैटल ऑफ पानीपत में हेमू. So basically what is happening is that yes, Babur is 13 years old and his handler is Bairam Khan, and it is at this time that Hemu, who was a military commander, tried to assert control over Delhi. Babur is supported by Bairam Khan. Under his leadership, they fought the second battle of Panipat to recapture the control of Delhi. This is what led to the second battle of Panipat. Hemu was defeated and Akbar asserts control, but Akbar is too young. He's actually working under Bairam Khan at this point of time. Over a period of time, Akbar becomes an adult, and under him the effective control passes. He first subdues Bairam Khan, who was becoming rebellious at this time, and then the next major challenge, the rule of Akbar, is considered very important. Why? Because Humayun had just managed to come back, after almost a decade and a half, when northern plains had passed in the hands of, Sher Shah Suri. So Humayun had just come back after a decade and a half, and taking back the control of northern plains. The immediate task in front of Akbar was to consolidate the rule of the Mughals over North India. देखिए, बाबर ने चालू किया था. Just when Humayun came, he is actually getting displaced by Sher Shah, and he had stayed out of power for a decade and a half. Now when Akbar takes over the effective control immediately after Humayun's death, there are two important tasks before him. First is to consolidate their hold over their territories. Secondly is to tackle the rebellions. Another rebellion, again from Mewar and the regions of what you call as were under the control of Maharana Pratap. And this is where you see the second major challenge in front of him. One challenge is addressed, quelling rebellions and consolidating in the second battle of Panipat, the second major challenge of the Rajput challenge that came was addressed in the battle of Haldi Ghati. Okay, now it is after this that one of the policies of Akbar was that after decade, that's the point of a good statesmanship or statecraft does not. Akbar was prudent enough to know that Rajputs themselves are a strong and a formidable player in the region, and unless both the sides reached some settlement, Rajputs will continue to cause troubles for whom? Mughals. It was a reflection of two things. It was a reflection of what? That yes, the Rajputs were themselves a significant force to reckon with. But the defeat in the battle of Haldi Ghati was also a signifier of the fact. The defeat of Rajputs in the battle of Haldi Ghati was also a signifier of the fact. Actually, to be very true, Maharana Pratap was never defeated. Maharana Pratap was forced to retreat from Chittor and all those things happened. Ultimately, but all other Rajputs agreed to, join hands with Akbar. So Akbar ka bada simple hand tha. Simple strategy Akbar had devised, and a very useful one, is to first militarily subdue the Rajputs. But even after subduing them, give them enough respect and extend a hand of friendship. Both the things. एक तरफ से, दूसरा तरफ से carrot and stick. First stick to tell them who is the boss. The second is, but understanding this point also, that the Rajput pride was important. Any clear challenge or clearly insulting the Rajputs was a bad strategy. Why? Because they will continue to cause trouble. So therein is the realization. Akbar extended that hand of friendship by giving Rajputs, rulers, prominent positions within the Mughal court. It's not that he actually slapped or anything. It's just that he tried to show them that he is militarily superior and yet gave them prominent positions within the Mughal court. At the same point of time, extended the hand of marital alliances also to a number of Rajput. Whom? To a number of Rajput रूलर्स. और देखिए बड़ा सिंपल सा है, अकबर का जैसे पिक्चर में दिखाया कुछ नहीं है ऐसा सीन, ठीक है, कि वो बैठे हुए हैं कि जोधाबाई की आस में एंड ऑल दैट. फालतू का टाइम नहीं है इतना. ओके, अकबर के पास. सो अकबर हैड अ नंबर ऑफ वाइव्स एंड द डॉटर ऑफ महाराजा ऑफ अंबर, popularly often known as Jodhabai, was only one of them. So he married a number of Rajput princes. He married a Portuguese princess also. Simple, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. He had a big harem, a big house, and where often the king's wives used to live. There's कोई फंडा नहीं है कि नहीं शाहरुख खान, करण जौहर, एक ही प्यार, 7 जन्म. No बकवास. This is middle class मानसिकता. नहीं, I am very clear. No person who pretended to be a king. I mean, you look at what, Western society, film stars, Indian society में भी film stars, तो वो एक आध शादी पे कोई मामला रुकता ही नहीं है, राइट? अभी ये हमारा ही सोच है कि एक होनी चाहिए, नहीं होनी चाहिए, ये है वो है. Otherwise, if you are a king, you got to live like a king, and Akbar also lived like a king, and many wives. And Ambar, and the daughter of Maharaja of Ambar, was only one of them. Okay. And yet, Akbar's significance of marrying the Rajputs was also this, that it signified a marital alliance, but also it signified another fact, that he was willing to allow different religions and even the daughter to carry out her, वो फिर वो पिक्चर में वही तमाशा जो दिखाया कि the Rajput daughter is allowed to carry out her religious traditions, etc. Yes, that's kind of true. That is often said that Akbar was more religiously tolerant than many others. He also abolished the jizya. Okay, so Akbar abolished the jizya. So all of that is there. Now, so in the second battle of Panipat, you can just write. Akbar re-established control over Delhi after defeating Hemu under the overall guidance of Bairam Khan. Battle of Haldi Ghati. Now, Akbar imposed Okay. So Akbar, in the Battle of Haldi Ghati in 1576, Akbar imposed. Akbar himself did not fight. He only deputed another Rajput under him, noble under him, to push a setback on Maharana Pratap. Okay. So Akbar टाइम लगेगा ना, किसी को भेज दो, देख लो. प्लीज छोड़ दो उसको, हो गया ना, मुझे दे. So, okay. Okay. So, Akbar basically imposed a major defeat on Maharana Pratap, following which successive marital alliances between Mughals and Rajput rulers were established. Between Mughals and Rajput rulers were established. So, now between Mughals and Rajput rulers were established. Now, the next thing about their administrative structure is revenue assessment के बहुत सारे points हैं. That is kind of something that you must know. Now, one of the things often said about Akbar was he brought in systematic reforms primarily to improve revenue assessment and collection. Why? Because to establish and to maintain a large empire and a large army, a strong and a stable source of revenue was also very essential. I told you, war fighting is getting more and more expensive also. So they had to maintain a large army. They had to have a more systematic system of revenue collection and assessment. And it is here that a number of these terms you must know from your prelims point of view. Now, Kanun goes, they were officers or land owners in charge of revenue assessment. करोरीज. नाउ व्हाट आर करोरीज? करोरी मतलब 1 करोड़. देखिए, कानून गोज वर इन चार्ज ऑफ रेवेन्यू असेसमेंट. व्हाट इज करोड़ी? करोरीज. करोरीज मतलब 1 crore, 1 CR. That piece of land whose total revenue generation was 1 CR was called 1 crore, and the individual made in charge of that land whose net tax collection would be 1 crore was called a karori. Okay, so again that was a term given to those made in charge of revenue collection where the total revenue collection would amount to 1 crore. Okay, so the revenue collection in an area where revenue collection would amount, revenue collectors in an area where the revenue collection would amount to 1 crore. Dashala. देखिए, they were looking at what kind of systematic structure can be kept for revenue assessment and collection, a scientific system of revenue assessment and collection. Even Sher Shah had put in a good revenue system, assessment system and collection system. And the Dashala system said 10. Okay, that they said that what must be the tax rate will be decided on the basis of tax collection and productivity pattern of the past 10 years. Okay, so if we had to decide the tax rate for this year, we will look at the average and the pattern of productivity and tax collection of the past 10 years to decide what must be the rate for this year. That is what the Dashala system was. You need to know that from your prelims point of view. So, the Dashala system involved a periodic assessment every 10 years for the purpose of ensuring revenue collection on the pattern of past 10 years, the pattern of productivity of past 10 years. Zapti. देखिए टोडरमल was one of the major systematic one of the major nobles in the court of अकबर. अकबर के टाइम में वो भी कौन थे? बीरबल. वो अलग थे. तानसेन. अरे देखिए यही होता है, शौकीन आदमी के जीवन में सब चीज होती है. अकबर, तानसेन वानसेन, म्यूजिक सब है. Okay, so he had Tansen, he had Birbal, and he also had good administrators like Todarmal who introduced these revenue systems like the Dashala system, like the Zapti. The Zapti system was Zapt kar lena. And here basically the Zapti, the Dashala system was a kind of system within Zapti. Or I'll just explain. Zapti mein what they said was that a good tax collection system will do two things. Will assess productivity, but also will look at market price. By productivity, okay, these many kgs, say these many tons of wheat is produced. But not all tax would be collected in cash. Not all tax would be collected in kind. It would be collected in cash also. So say if the productivity was 10 tons or say 20 tons per hectare, say of land, whatever. Okay. Then according to productivity multiplied by the prevailing market prices, one could calculate the total revenue value of the produce, and a portion of the revenue would be collected by the state. So under the Zapti system, it was not just important to assess the productivity of the land, but also the market price of the commodity. That is there. And the Dashala system was one aspect of Zapti, where once in every decade, they would assess the productivity and market prices का पूरा 10 साल का data एक साथ उठा के they would assess. So Dashala was a way. Once in a 10 year आप उसको once in 5 year भी कर सकते हैं, once in 4 years भी कर सकते हैं, but once in 10 years, so it was called Dashala. And Dashala was a type of revenue assessment system under Zapti, which was introduced by Todarmal. Okay, so Zapti tomorrow is what day? अरे no class नहीं. Tomorrow ma'am is taking. हाँ नहीं, tomorrow. आज क्या है? Thursday. Tomorrow ma'am is taking from 2:30 to 7. है ना? तो अरे ऐसे क्यों कर रहे हैं? आपका जल्दी कोर्स खत्म हो जाएगा. Right? So that is there. Ma'am is taking from 2:30 to 7 tomorrow. अभी मुझे नहीं पता, वो मैम से पूछ लीजिए. जब्ती और was Todarmal argued that revenue assessment along with productivity assessment along with market prices must be assessed. अब next is बटाई और गल्ला बख्शी. बटाई, what does this mean? Simple. They said कोई 10 साल का डेटा फेटा कुछ नहीं, खेत पे जाएंगे वहीं होगी बटाई. Just when the crop is being harvested, the tax collectors will go. 1/3 portion will be taken by tax collector, rest with the farmer. 1/3, 1/4, 1/6, whatever, they varying from area to area. So it was be on the field, on the spot assessment depending on the productivity. That was बटाई और गल्ला बख्शी. बड़ी मुश्किल से याद किया मैंने, लॉजिक है थोड़ा सा. इफ यू लुक एट वर्ड्स, बटाई मतलब बांटना है, द प्रोड्यूस. ओके, दशाला once in 10 years. अभी once in 10 years तो बांटेंगे नहीं. Once in 10 years, they're taking out the decadal data to assess and decide tax rates on that basis. And Zapti was the zapt karna, right? So, kitna portion zapt karna hai? That ka formula is to be decided by productivity and the market price. तो आपको क्या लग रहा है? Are these scientific systems of tax assessment or collection or unscientific? Scientific. Okay. So that is what they're trying to do, because they have to put in a systematic system if they need a constant source of revenue, right? So the Batai or Galla Bakshi basically involved direct system of portion of harvest being collected as tax at the time of reaping or harvest season. Nusk, this is the last type. NASQ, they said जो भी system चला आ रहा है, some areas were under Zapti, some areas were under, Batai or Galla Bakshi, and some areas were under the Nusk system. 3 major types were there: Nusk, Batai, and the Zapti. Okay, these were the 3 major types of system. मैं क्यों बता रहा हूँ, ये prelims में सीधा they will ask. Okay, at least these many terms. So these 3 are the types of revenue assessment. In Nusk system, they said whatever were the local tradition, that will continue. Jitna tax according to local traditions was collected by local zamindars previously, that would continue to be collected. So the Nusk system was about the pre-existing systems of revenue assessment and collection pre-existing system of revenue assessment and collection that prevailed in a area. Tax collection will continue to happen along its style as well. देखिए, और लैंड की प्रोडक्टिविटी के बेस पे होगा सब कुछ, राइट? सो टाइप्स ऑफ लैंड वर आल्सो कैटेगराइज्ड, किसकी कितनी प्रोडक्टिविटी है. पोलज लैंड वाज लैंड कल्टिवेटेड एवरी ईयर. Parati land, Parati. This was land cultivated every alternate year मतलब once in 2 years. Once in Pulaj Parati. Then Chachar. चचर बंजर, बंजर के एक पहले चचर. ये एकदम लॉजिक है इनका. एवरी ईयर इज पोलर. परति इज once in 2 years. This is once in 3 years. This is once in 3 to 4 years. And this is once in 5 years. पुलज, परति, चचर, बंजर. बंजर मतलब बंजर जमीन, बड़ी मुश्किल से कभी कभार was cultivated, low fertility. So they're saying on the basis of number of crops grown in a year. Once in a year, पुलज, परति, चचर, बंजर. आप जब पूछेगा पुलज, परति, चचर, what do they refer to? आप बोल रहे पता नहीं which form of worship, which form of military administration. nahi, this is about fertility of the soil and tax collection based on that logic. अभी मैं क्या करूं, मतलब personally I hate teaching this, okay, but नहीं करूंगा तो मेरा धर्म भ्रष्ट हो जाएगा, right? Like I'm not doing my job. So Akbar's religious policies, ये तो सबने पढ़ा है, आपने सबने सुना ही है कुछ ना कुछ. देखिए, इबादत खाना, तौहीद ए इलाही which later becomes दीन इलाही, and the sulai-kul, whatever, that is the policy of religious tolerance. And sati, he abolished sati. He talked about widow remarriage. So that's there. But so firstly इबादत का देखिए, अकबर के साथ सिंपल बॉन्ड है. पढ़ने लिखने का इन्हें बहुत शौक था, लेकिन ना इन्हें पढ़ना आता था ना लिखना, राइट. 13 years age, so from the young age he got involved in administration, never got time to learn to read and write, and he was the king, so he could never admit that he did not know how to read and write. So thus he came out with the simple idea. He would call people to come and discuss their ideas in front of him, read out their books to him. He would call the author only. आओ अब बताओ क्या लिखा है किताब में अपनी. सिंपल ऑडियो बुक्स यू टॉक अबाउट टुडे, वो एकदम रियल बुक को बुला रहे हैं, आओ बैठो, प्लीज टेल मी वट एवर इज यू हैव रिटन. सिमिलरली डिफरेंट थियोलॉजिस्ट ऑफ ऑल रिलीजन्स ही वुड कीप कॉलिंग. पोर्टुगीज आए इंडिया में तो पोर्टुगीज को बोला तुम भी भेज दो, जो आता था उसको बोलते थे आप भेज दो. हाँ, जैन आ जाओ, बुद्धिज्म आ जाओ, हिंदुइज्म आ जाओ, क्रिश्चियनिटी, इस्लाम सब आ जाओ, राइट. So their needs like we will make them all sit in one place that was called as इबादत खाना. अभी इबादत खाना में all these religious scholars will sit and they will discuss and debate, and Akbar would also be there and he would learn from them also, and it would promote better understanding of religions amongst each other, all of that. But soon Akbar realized that क्या ये सब पूछना सब everybody was trying to impress Akbar and trying to show the other religion in poor light. Portuguese अलग झंडा लेके आ रहे थे अपना. They wanted to convert Akbar to Christianity. Okay, so they like we'll prove that this is better. Everybody wanted to prove that their religion is better. Akbar ने बोला सब फालतू है. Akbar then said कि नहीं एक एक करके आओ. Okay, क्योंकि आपस में otherwise you start fighting. So all of that. So he did that. Then Tawhid-e-Ilahi. Here he is saying that we will bring in elements of all religions together. He said that every religion in some form often talks about certain forms of monotheism. For example, even the Rig Vedas, etc. They talk about certain form of monotheism. So yes, monotheism is often talked about by many religions. And Tawhid-e-Ilahi was the idea of bringing in elements and good elements of all religions together into one syncretic form. And this is later something which also became the message of Akbar, was called Deen-e-Ilahi. Sul-e-Kul. Sulai Kul basically was the idea of religious tolerance. The idea that different religions, that the state will be tolerant towards all religions and people of all religions and will be respectful towards their ideas. Anyways, he had abolished jizya. He also argued for abolition of sati and legalization of widow remarriage. So, बस चलिए Akbar's religious policy, बस ये याद रख लीजिए. इबादत खाना, what is it? It was a place for religious and theological discussions. Tawheed-e-Ilahi, a monotheistic form of religion which would imbibe the best teachings and practices of all. Later called as Deen-e-Ilahi. Sulk Kul was the idea of religious tolerance of the state towards people of all religion. He abolished jizya. Argued for abolition of sati and legalization of widow remarriage. Now, organization of the government, Sarkar, was often Sarkar, yes. Written. Today I am going for a talk. मतलब listen. हमारे जीवन में भी कहीं से तो ज्ञान आना चाहिए ताकि यहाँ आके हम ज्ञान बांट सके. So Yogendra Yadav is giving a talk on the agrarian crisis and Indian democracy, India International Center, organized by Indian Express. तो हमको नहीं होता है, हम भी जाएंगे. So, organization of the government. Sarkar, or the organization of the government of Sarkar, was to be divided into two broad terms often used, Faujdar and Amal Guzar. Faujdar was in charge again of what? Army and law and order maintenance. And देखिए, I am not getting into those systems that I have already told you before. Jagirdari, Jagirdari or Mansabdari, right? And then the Khalisa, and then the Ijara system. ये सब बता चुका हूं मैं. All these things we have talked before in modern also, right? So I'm not going there. In the Jagirdari system, there were often two terms also that I want to tell: Jat and Sawar. Jat was the rank of whom? Was the rank of the Mansabdar. And Sawar were the number of soldiers to be maintained by the Mansabdar. In the Sarkar, the Fausdar was responsible for army and law and order maintenance, whereas the Amal Guzar is in charge of overseeing revenue administration. So you must know what are these terms with reference to. The Amal Guzar was responsible for overseeing revenue administration. Most probably from Monday onwards, the July batch people, kone wale, they will go back to their eco. यहाँ वाले सिक्योरिटी पढ़ेंगे पहले 4-5 क्लासेस जो रह गई थी. 4 classes have happened for security, right? Internal security. 4 or 5 more classes will happen for the June paper. और जुलाई वालों का अभी तक तो कंबाइंड चल रहा था, फिर जुलाई वालों उसके बाद 5:30 बजे के बाद एक्स्ट्रा क्लास है security so that both your batches ka security almost will complete at the same time, but the next 4 or 5 classes will be separate, not combined. Okay, the June people will have from 2:30 and the July people will have from 5:30. That is a tentative thing. You will get a mail. मैं कंबाइन करके ही पढ़ाऊंगा. वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री तो हम इतना अच्छे से पढ़ेंगे कि आप कोशिश करिएगा कि बहुत सवाल आए उससे. This year there is a decently good chance that you will get questions on World War I, China and the French Revolution. My hunch is out of these 3 topics itself there will be 1 or 2 questions. World War 100 years. चाइना से अभी तक आया नहीं है, सब कुछ को पूछ लिया, मलेशिया पूछ लिया, ईस्ट अफ्रीका पूछ रहे, मतलब चाइना की कोई इज्जत है कि नहीं. So China, and the third is also the French Revolution. क्यों? क्योंकि American Revolution has already been asked, Industrial Revolution has already been asked, Russian Revolution. फ्रांस वालों ने ऐसा क्या किया आपके साथ? और वैसे भी आपने देखा मैम शुभ्रा मैम का बोर्ड फ्रांस का झंडा है, अगर आपने कभी गौर किया हो, है ना? So that is it. So we often joke, if we were to apply for citizenship, we'll apply for French citizenship. Okay. फ्रांस का झंडा एकदम. Now, so that we'll discuss world history most likely. We'll hold the joint classes for you for world history. Now, Inam land. What is Inam land? Religious monks or religious leaders were granted land rights. That is Inam lands. Religious leaders will be granted land rights. Religious leaders will be granted land rights. Diwane Ala. The divan would be the head to oversee all revenue administrative policies. Mir Bakshi, Barids and Vaknavis. Mir Bakshi, Barids and Vaknavis. So, what do you know about Barids and Vaknavis? Any clue? No? No clue? Governor? And who are Vaknavis? No? No clue? देखिए, चलिए पहले एक बार मीर काजी छोटा था. मीर काजी क्या है? हेड प्रीस्ट. मीर काजी was the head priest. Mir Qazi was the head priest. And pardon? Barids and Vaknavis. Vakya Navis. So, just a second, I need to put in a message. देखिए, Barids were whom? Intelligence officers. Ajit Doval साहब. And Vakyanavis were news reporters. Arnab. One were intelligence officers, the other were because somebody who would take the news. ये news reporter का मतलब ये नहीं लोगों को news सुना रहे हैं. Intelligence officers would be collecting news and the Vakyanavis would be reporting that news to the center, and if it was to be made available for the general public's consumption, that also was done by them, whom the Vakyanavis. Okay, that is what you need to know from your prelims point of. Pardon? Mir Bakshi is the one to whom all these people would respond. Yeah, Barids and Vakyanavis. They would report to the Mir Bakshi, who would basically be overseeing intelligence collection as well as the reportage. चलिए, अभी क्या ये कल्चर वल्चर बाद में पढ़ेंगे, पर पोर्टुगीज पढ़ते मजेदार चीज. गोवा तो चलना ही चाहिए हमें. I have another suggestion for ma'am कि one crash course must happen in Goa. One crash course must happen in Goa. कौन सा? Prelims वाला. No. हाँ, prelims crash course must happen in Goa and mains crash course must happen in पहाड़ में कहीं भी. Dalhousie, Dharamshala, Kasol, कहीं. There's a reason. It is so cold and so bad a weather in north during winters. That's the time to be in Goa. सुबह से अमन पढ़े 8 बजे से 2 बजे तक. उसके बाद 2 बजे के बाद रिलैक्स 1-2 घंटा और पढ़िए. फिर इवनिंग you go to the beach, relax, chill, and next day again come back to study. And ऐसी मेंस में होना चाहिए. पहाड़ इतनी गर्मी पड़ती है दिल्ली में, it's inhospitable, 45-50 temperature. So we should go to पहाड़, and वहाँ पढ़ाई भी अच्छी होगी, नींद भी अच्छी आएगी. चलिए, Portuguese. देखिए पोर्टुगीज में आपको क्या पढ़ना है, बेसिक बस, हु डिड व्हाट काइंड ऑफ स्टफ. सिंपल है. पहली बात, पोर्टुगीज आई क्यों, व्हाट इज पोर्टुगीज डूइंग. यू सी दिस मैप, वी ऑल नो 1497 1498 हु केम, वास्को डे गामा. गामा जी आए, वास्को डे गामा केम फ्रॉम पोर्टुगीज. And what did he do is, the most important thing is that he found an alternative route to come to Cochin. He landed at Cochin in 1498. And what was his unique thing was, he found an alternative route to Cochin, the one shown in red. Now, why did he want an alternative route in the first place? Actually, one of the most important things to understand is that it was the Ottomans. It was the Ottomans who had a control over large parts of, the regions eastwards of Eastern Europe or in the West Asia region. The Ottomans controlled large parts of West Asia up till the borders of Iran. And because Ottomans controlled this region, they said that any trade which passes through their territories, they will tax. And many profitable commodities, one of the most profitable commodities required in Europe in huge amounts and in demand at this point of time were spices. Most particularly what? Black pepper. Kali mirch. Kali mirch was one commodity which was in huge demand. Black pepper was in huge demand. And any trade which happened through the land route, who wanted to tax it? The Ottomans. And where did this trade ultimately target itself largely? Europe. So for any trade to happen with Europe, Ottomans were the ones who demanded a significant share of the profits and basically taxes. Okay. Now, ultimately, you see that's one thing. The second thing was not just the Ottomans. Chaliye Ottomans se to bach liye. Here, there were also whom? Egyptians. Any trade that could happen through the Red Sea region or somewhere around it, the Egyptians also wanted to tax that trade. So even they were willing to. So if land route trade happened, who would tax it? The Ottomans. Sea route happened, who would tax it? The Egyptians. So they said, who? The Western European countries led by the Portuguese for the first time said, we will find an alternative route to bypass both Ottomans and Egyptians. And that is the route that they are finding through the Cape of Good Hope coming to India. Yes or no? So what drove the Portuguese to search for an alternative trade route was the Ottomans' desire to tax, was the desire of the Egyptians to tax, was the desire of the Portuguese to dominate the hugely profitable trade in what? Black pepper and other spices with East, including India and China, or South Asia and China at this point of time. Because trade in these commodities often, they were sold at, it was not unusual, it was very usual for goods to be sold at 10 times, 20 times, 50 times, 100 times, even 1,000 times their prices at which they were bought from India. Where? In Europe. So Portuguese had all the incentive to monopolize, to seek to monopolize the trade with the East. And for this, the challenge that they had was that they had to find a new trade route. And Vasco da Gama is the one who's carrying out this expedition. The Portuguese were able to build better ships at this point of time. At the same point of time, the Portuguese were able to build better ships. They made an effective use of the compass, something that had originated partly in China, but they made a much better and effective use of compass, as well as their ships had a larger capacity, were more durable, and they managed to find an alternative trading route coming to Cochin. When they came to Cochin looking for trading rights, the king of Cochin, the Zamorin of Calicut, basically allowed the Portuguese also an entry. So just like the Arab traders, just like other traders were doing trade, they allowed the Portuguese also entry in 1497, 1498. There is another angle to this. In Western European society, there was a huge demand not just for spices but silk, etc. Why? Because these were considered luxurious items and they were sought by the richest sections. Also, the Portuguese saw themselves. The church in Western Europe argued that, Christianity can spread eastwards, and the Portuguese, who are going to find new routes, must take also the message of God with themselves. ये जो गॉड का मैसेज लेके बहुत लोग आते हैं आजकल, राइट? सो द पोर्टुगीज ऑल्सो आर द वंस हु आर कैरिंग द मैसेज ऑफ गॉड एंड क्रिश्चियनिटी. So they also came, another motivation for them to look towards the east is that they would carry the message of God. अरे we had enough gods. हर तरह के हमारे पास है सब, भक्ति, सूफी, हिंदुइज्म में वैष्णविज्म, शिवाइट ट्रेडिशंस, उसके बुद्धिज्म, जैनिज्म, उसमें और आके क्रिश्चियनिटी. Okay? So they are bringing Christianity also in a major way, and in the sense that their active aim was also to bring about, it was their explicit aim to bring about religious conversions in a major way as well. The Portuguese, when they came here, so we will talk about that eventually a bit later. So ये आपको पता होना चाहिए. So the factors which drove the Portuguese to look towards India. देखिए, आप गोवा जाते हैं, इतना आपको कुछ तो पता होना चाहिए, और साउथ गोवा जाइए जरूर. देयर इज, इफ यू गो टू साउथ गोवा, देयर इज देयर चैपल which is also some, I think, which heritage site, I don't know, some world heritage site or UNESCO heritage site, God knows which heritage site it is, but it is some heritage site. I have seen it, it is grand, it is huge. If they could construct that in 1500s, that's something huge. Okay, it's हाँ, वो 2-3 चर्च के चैपल्स हैं वहाँ पे, सब बड़े बड़े हैं बहुत, पर अंदर उतना मसाला नहीं है जितना हमारे हैं. टेम्पल वेम्पल में ज़्यादा इंट्रिकेट कार्विंग वार्विंग है, उनका थोड़ा कम है. ऐसे ही तो कहते हैं टेस्ट, बिल्डिंग बनाने से कुछ थोड़ी होता है सर, ऐसे नक्काशी वक्काशी कम है इनकी बहुत. ओके, दैट इज देयर. नाउ सो factors which drove the Portuguese to look towards India. The Ottomans imposed taxes and sought to control the overland trade passing through their land to Europe. Egypt's second reason is Egypt's monopoly over trade, oceanic trade. through the Red Sea region. Through the Red Sea region. Third, the Portuguese wanted to monopolize the trade with the East. So the point is, देखिए, the Suez Canal is being constructed predominantly in the 18th century. लेकिन क्या होता था? मेडिटेरेनियन से ट्रेड आता था. Trade would come till the Mediterranean, then change hands in Egypt, then Red Sea to Gujarat, the port of Surat. That is how. It did not mean कि तभी मैंने बोला Red Sea, मैंने ये शब्द यूज नहीं किया Suez. Your question is valid. That कि सर Suez Canal तो है ही नहीं, तो तब Suez जब नहीं था, that is when partly first trade happened with till the Mediterranean, and from the Mediterranean on the land, and from then Egyptian ships to Gujarat. Bahadur Shah and Surat was a major. Surat always, सूरत से अगर आपने ट्रेड छीन लिया तो सूरत में रह क्या जाएगा. एंड सूरत वाज ऑलवेज अ मेजर नेवल ट्रेडिंग सेंटर, अ मेजर पोर्ट, ट्रेडिंग पोर्ट रीजन. दैट इज इट. क्लियर? व्हाट? हाँ, ऐसे ऐसे क्यों हैं? कंपस, दे आर ट्राइंग टू चार्ट आउट अ वे. सो एक्चुअली सी राइट, आप जब यहां खड़े हैं तो आपको ऐसे थोड़ी है कि अरे रोड है सीधी सीधी बनी हुई है उस पर चल रहे, राइट. दे आर ट्राइंग टू फिगर आउट द वे, mapping their route on the way so that they have a clear latitude, longitude all the way to come back and go back. अरे मुश्किल काम है आजकल. क्या वॉन्डर लस्ट है, सीधी सीधी रोड है, वॉन्डर लस्ट है, रॉयल इनफील्ड बाइक है और गाड़ी में पेट्रोल है, सर पे हेलमेट है और टाइम बहुत है, बस These fellows are doing the real stuff, right? आजकल अभी ऐसी होता है, नॉर्थ में हिमालयस एंड ले की मौत आई हुई है, राइट. एवरी पर्सन जो ज्यादा ही अमीर है वो अपनी एसयूवी लेके चला जाता है, जो और वन हु इज टू अमीर एंड इन हिज 40s गोज बाय एसयूवीज. वन हु इज ठीक ठीक एंड हैज अ बाइक एंड हैज जवानी का जो बाइक पे ही चल रहे, सब पहुंच रहे हैं. क्या कर रहे हैं जाके, मेरे समझ में नहीं आता है. वहां जाके कुछ समझ में नहीं आता है. फोटो खींच रहे, सेल्फी और ऊपर तक पैंगोंग तक चले जाए, वहां सेल्फी आ जाओ वापस, हो गया. बाइकर डूड्स, राइट. सो कोई अता पता, कोई ठिकाना नहीं है क्यों कर रहे हैं, बस सेल्फी खींचने पहुंच गए वहां तक. खरदुंगला पे जाके सेल्फी खींच रहे, अपनी कबर पे खड़ोगे. चलिए कोई नहीं. बट द थर्ड इज दैट द पोर्टुगीज वांटेड टू मोनोपोलाइज द स्टेट ओन ट्रेड विद द ईस्ट, प्राइमरीली इन विच black pepper, and it was Vasco da Gama who came to Calicut. Vasco da Gama came to Calicut. Next is Almeida. Francisco de Almeida, he is the first Governor General. They gave 1498. Who came? Vasco da Gama came. He bought goods from Calicut, and then he went back. After him, to maintain relations and establish a Portuguese presence in India, Francisco de Almeida was appointed as the first Governor General of Portuguese affairs in the East. क्या हुआ? Almeida is trying to what? Capture control over what? Surat and Gujarat, Daman and Diu, Surat, Gujarat, the ports. Why? Because it was from here that they could disrupt the nexus, firstly between whom? The Egyptians and the traders of Gujarat, and they could establish their own trading links in the region. But क्या हुआ? In 1507, Almeida's son, in 1506, Almeida's son is killed. By whom? By the Egyptian traders. Okay. And in the very next year, Almeida returns to seek a revenge. And ultimately, Almeida returned to seek a revenge and burned down all Egyptian ships in the region. Okay. And established the control over Diu. Daman and Diu wala Diu. Okay. And thus in 1507, Almeida is laying down the foundation. पहली बार लड़ाई हो रही है. Almeida is laying down the foundation for whom? For the Portuguese in the Daman and Diu region, over the coast near the coast of Gujarat. Okay, so Almeida sought to avenge the death of his son in 1507. In 1507, Diu was captured by Portuguese under Almeida and disrupted the trade relationship between Egyptians and Gujarat, between Egyptians and rulers of Gujarat. Between Egyptians and rulers of Gujarat. Next is Albuquerque. 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 Whatever you want to say. These people are no more, nor do we have any links with the Portuguese. It's okay. Nobody is going to get offended. He is a very important figure. Why? Because he is saying that if Portuguese want to hold on, to, and consolidate their base in this region, it is in Albuquerque's control under him, firstly, that they defeated Bijapur and took control of Goa. In 1510, they took control of Goa. More importantly, he says, in Goa, क्या बनाया? Aguda Fort. दिल चाहता है fort. है, उसमें वहां बैठ के 3 भारतीय मिडिल क्लास males with all privilege in their life and yet not figured out what to do with their lives are asking कि दिल क्या चाहता है. अरे that is Aguda fort made by Albuquerque to defend the Portuguese against any attacks. आपकी बकवास झाटू फिलोसफी के लिए नहीं है वो. क्या है मतलब, कुछ भी बकवास कर रहे इंडियन. Middle class Indians have absolutely nothing else left in life. Everything of significance is only about their hearts. This is disgusting. Not what I said, what these people think. मतलब ऐसे थोड़ी ना होता है. आप किसी भी चीज को बस उठा के यही कर देते हैं हम लोग बार बार. ए दिल है मुश्किल है, दिल है मुश्किल है, दिल है मुश्किल खत्म ही नहीं हो रही है. 20 साल से देख रहा हूं मैं. For 20 years of Indian Bollywood, only substantive that thing they produce is bullshit over bullshit over bullshit every time, and they expect Indians to watch. You know, it's irritating. So Albuquerque did a bigger job with Fort Aguda. Whenever I went to Fort Aguda, people are taking selfie. दिल चाहता है फोर्ट है वो. This is a time when you feel Indians did not deserve freedom. These are the times which makes you feel that Indians don't deserve freedom. All that they can think is Instagram and selfie. Right? Albuquerque is saying a very important thing. Albuquerque is saying a very important thing, and he's saying that the Portuguese will not be able to hold on only with naval superiority. They need to build forts. If they don't build forts, the Portuguese, merely by the naval presence, will not be in a position to hold on. And under Albuquerque, forts are built not just in Goa, everywhere on the coast of Eastern Africa. These all regions where you see in Mogadishu, you know, in all these areas also they are building forts under Albuquerque. And actually we don't get, if you go from the pol science perspective, you know, Almeida said that we need to control the choke points. Okay, and it is under Albuquerque who says that yes, choke points or the control of major trading choke points is important, but also is the forts. Because without forts, we won't be able to do much. And the Portuguese are doing what at this time? Much before the British had a navy, much before the French had a navy, the most powerful navy was the Portuguese. And the Portuguese said, we will control the whole trade in the region. How? By controlling the choke points in Eastern Africa, by controlling the choke points in the borders of Malacca, and by pirating and raiding. Pirates of the Caribbean you have seen. Usme wo kaun hai? They are speaking Portuguese and Spanish, etc. They are all pirates, and these fellows were also good pirates. Simple. Nobody else will do trade on these oceans except the Portuguese. If anybody else has to do trade, they have to pay tax to the Portuguese. To oversee all of this, they are building forts in the region. And they also had a control up till the Malacca. So they are placing control in Malacca, in the Malaysia region. They are placing control in Goa because they said, yahan se jo trade jayega, any trade that goes towards Red Sea, we will shoot it down if you don't pay us a tax. Simple. Hafta lena hai. Any oceanic trade, they are clarifying, either will happen through us or after our permission. But for that, they need to maintain a strong fort presence also. Albuquerque is the one under which Fort Aguda is also built. Dil chata hai fort. And also you see that they are becoming not just a naval power. If you apply here the Mackinder-Mahan hypothesis, pol science वाले जिसको नहीं पता कोई बात नहीं, तो कोई जरूरत है नहीं क्योंकि है ना. So one is Mackinderite, the other is Mahanite, is often said in this context of the Portuguese also. कोई बात नहीं, हमने मुद्दा बस इतना ही काफी है. Albuquerque, last point here. In 1510, control of Goa taken from Bijapur. The establishments of forts in the region to oversee most trading routes. To oversee most trading routes. Including the Gouda fort. Ninoda Kuna. He came after Albuquerque and under Kuna, firstly, the capital or the base of Portuguese was shifted from Cochin to Goa. From Cochin to Goa. Under him, there is also the abolition of sati. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to abolish sati. Or they will promote marriages of Portuguese men with local women and convert them to Christianity. The Portuguese were known for doing a number of forced conversions, religious conversions in a major way. देखिए, Portuguese का population is limited. They want to control vast territory of the size of India. अरे कैसे होगा भाई? You first have to increase your population, and they want to spread Christianity also. That they decided that the men will marry more than one woman, local, सब जितना हो सकता है. You marry and you have kids with the locals and convert them to Christianity. That is a way by which you increase your influence and presence in the region. The factors which led to the decline of Portuguese, that we'll discuss next time. Mostly it is covered, hardly 1-1.5 घंटे का रह गया. And in both of your classes, in both the batches, is there some discussion on peasant movements of the 20th century left? Socio-religious and peasant movements of the 20th century is not done, na? Both the batches. Right. So I'll be once your security portion gets over, I'll come back anyways again. So a class I will take for you both joint and wrap that up. That portion along with some things which are left here. Okay, Vijayanagara Empire and all of those things. And then we start with world history. Thank you.